Welcome back to the Following Films podcast. Thank you for listening. Before we jump into the conversation, do me a quick favor. If you like what we're doing here, take a second to subscribe. Leave a review on whatever app you're using and share the episode with a friend. It genuinely helps to keep the show growing, and I appreciate it. On today's episode, I'm chatting with cinematographer James Kniest about his work on the upcoming Amazon original film, The Devil's Mouth. The setup is classic survival horror. A group of college friends on a Thailand trip end up trapped in submerged caves. What makes or breaks a movie like this usually comes down to how real the claustrophobia feels. So James and I talk about what it actually takes to shoot in the dark, wet, cramped spaces without it looking like a soundstage. Before we get into the interview, though, I want to take a minute to talk about a fantastic new track from the San Francisco punk band, Testing the Details. They just released a cover of Green Day's Scattered, which is featured on a new Green Day tribute compilation out from Coffin Curse Records and Punk Rock Radar. Even better, all the proceeds from the compilation go straight to no-kill animal shelters. Rather than just doing a carbon copy of the original Nimrod track, they completely made it their own. Frontwoman Tess Stevens directed the music video as a bit of a love letter to the Bay Area, shooting in places like an old BART station payphone and the legendary San Francisco venue Bottom of the Hill, which is unfortunately closing down at the end of 2026. I'm going to play a quick snippet from the song right now, then I'll play the full track at the very end of the episode.
'Cause I learned from my mistakes well. Open the past and present now when we are there. Story to tell and I am listening. Open the past and present and the future too. It's all I got and I'm giving it to you.
Okay, let's get into my conversation with James. In addition to The Devil's Mouth, we chat about our shared love of music, the current state of the film industry, and what it was like working with Mike Flanagan. The Devil's Mouth will be available to stream on Amazon Prime on July 29th. I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks.
Depeche Mode, that takes me back to my era.
Well, I'll be 50 this year, so I was right in that spot for Depeche Mode and Joy Division and all those other bands like that from that time period. So
I'm 57, so those are such good years. I mean, the 80s music was awesome. I like it all. It's funny because some of the bands, like I hated Duran Duran when I was a kid, but now I love them. They're so good. And I just saw them at Beach Life this year. They're insane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I love I love all kinds of music. I grew up listening to punk rock and reggae, and now I'm back into my I wouldn't call it death metal, but like Black Label Society and
sure, yeah,
the band The Sword.
Yep, yeah.
I'm super into The Sword lately, and my daughter's like, "What's going on with you?"
So you're about 2 weeks away from being just full on into Viking metal or something at that point.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. Well, there's this other band that I kind of recently discovered that's from that era, Rome. They're like
sure.
Yeah, they're a little. I mean, I don't know. I have to be kind of delicate. They're a little Austrian, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So I have to be really careful who I play that around. But I like all music. It just depends on your mood now. And it's so easy because you can say, Alexa, play Brian's Ferry. And then the next day I'm saying, Alexa, play Sex Pistols, or play Ultimate Jazz, whatever it is. Like we can just listen to whatever we want now instead of having to go and get the record out. And I can see, are those movies or
those are all Blu-rays, DVDs, a couple of VHS up top in the mix around there. So yeah, I'm still a physical media guy. I love it. The picture quality to me it doesn't get as good on streaming, and not that streaming has improved incredibly over the last couple of years, but still things go away sometimes, and I like having access to those.
100%. No, I agree with you 100%.
So are you still a physical guy? Do you buy your music still, or do you?
I lament the day that I was moving at a time and I threw away about 20 milk crates full of records. And then I ended up with hundreds of CDs, and well, I guess and I had cassettes. I used to have cassettes cataloged, and when I was in high school, my sister would steal them, so I made a full checklist. She had to check them out, like the library, and get them back, and now it's just it's mostly digital. I listen to satellite radio mostly. Like I can't really deal with regular radio.
Sure.
And then mostly digital stuff now. It's just because I can access whatever I want right away. I do miss records and the sound of records.
Well, there's something that I think to me that I missed the most was going to the record store and looking through everything. And whether I was flipping through CDs or tapes or vinyl or anything like that, and having that thing that you were taking a chance on, be it because it was a recommendation, you were into punk rock, so you probably did a similar thing. It would be by a label sometimes where I'd go in and be like, okay, this is on Sub Pop. This is something on SST. I trust that label. I want to see what, I don't know this band, but sure, I'll give it a shot and see what it is. And, just because these guys hang out with the Descendants, I'm going to give it a shot and see if it's any good. And I discovered some of my favorite bands that way, and they stick. Because even if you don't like something right away, you had to hang out with it because you spent $14 on this thing.
Well, no, that's exactly right. And I would kind of lean into the to like the compilations, Decline of Western Civilization,
sure.
Or like these, and a lot of times what got me into reggae too was like the Sunsplash 76, and I'd have all these bands, so I would pick ones that had a bunch of different bands. And it's funny you mentioned that, because that was largely one of the things that motivated me to get into photography was liner notes and album covers. And if you look back, the artwork was so cool, and it was so prevalent. Like now they don't even really do that anymore. I guess they have a website or a Instagram page now or something, but
I guess it's the difference between a thumbnail versus this giant record that you would be holding and something that you could actually dive into. And now that I have 50-year-old eyes, when I look at CD liner notes, it's like, oh my god, I can't read a damn thing. I can barely read the side of this thing, let alone the liner notes inside it. So
it's so humbling. I'm going through that now. Like, it's the thing that's been getting me is how do my glasses get so dirty? Like, what the hell?
All the time.
Was my face that dirty? Like, I'm constantly trying to clean them, and then I realize, I've been scratching them, and they're not cheap. Even with insurance, it's $400 for a pair of glasses. It's nuts, and it's just so humbling. And it used to be like, "Where's my wallet?" And I was like, "Where's my glasses? Where's my glasses?" I can't function without them.
Well, yeah, like I haven't smoked in 20 years, but it was when I left the house, I had to find my wallet, my cigarettes, and my lighter, and I couldn't leave the house without those. Now I can't leave the house without my glasses and my phone. And so those are the two things I'm looking for.
Funny how things change. And I can't find anything anymore because, where's my black wallet? Oh, it's in my black backpack with my black pen. I just I can't see. It's so humbling. I don't know. Hey, at least I'm still here.
Exactly. So the question I wanted to lead off with today, it's something I was struck by immediately with The Devil's Mouth, is the sense of geography, which is something that I think a lot of genre films, action and horror films and TV shows, they often screw up in the name of fast editing. You have no idea where you are. Therefore, you don't really understand the stakes of the moment that you're in. And probably even as much, if not more, than in something like Hush, where geography is just so important, or even in The Midnight Club, these other things you've done, where I think you always have a good sense of exactly where you are and where they're trying to go. And so could you talk a little bit about how you plan that out and how you make sure the audience is able to track where they are in the world you've created?
Yeah, I think that is important as a viewer, is to understand where you are. And, typically we're always trying to cheat stuff just for, logistics or simplicity. Even like, we'll do a French reverse or things like that, just because the turnaround is so big. Or, maybe we find amazing locations and we can only see 270 and we can't see other way. So we're always trying to cheat it. But I think as a viewer, it's really important to not, to feel like something makes sense. So it's part of the continuity, really, in my mind. For The Devil's Mouth, we did a lot of planning. We had a lot of, path. There's a whole path that they go through. Mm-hmm. And it was really important. Our production designer, Alec Hammond, he's just amazing, really creative, super smart guy. And the director, Jeff Wadlow, as well. And so we had many, many discussions about where are they in the cave and how far, and then especially because they backtrack, right? And there's this whole story, they get lost. So we had maps on set all the time of what the direction was, where they were, what the camera direction was. And we talked about it ad nauseum. Like, okay, now they're swimming backwards. kind of have to switch the lighting a little bit. There was a couple of backgrounds that were CG, so we had to make sure that those were geographically correct. And they reference these points too. So it was we tracked it all collectively as a team, and it was really important that we had a plan. And it was we had a whiteboard on set with that day's layout. In the real caves, they were real, and in the real rivers, they were real. But we did do a lot of work on stage, and we changed sets overs to be different caves. And so there's a lot of different rocks and iconic pieces that are moving all the time. And so we would have layouts blown up on a giant whiteboard of where everything was. And we actually had arrows and things that mapped out. And we would do a scene or do a take, and then we would all come out of the water. We'd go to the whiteboard. It was just like, halftime at a football game. And we'd go do X's and O's every new setup. And I think that kept everybody's on track, especially the actors too, because they knew where they were coming from and where they were going to. We shot with 4 cameras the whole time. So then we had to kind of, that informed where the cameras were, what the screen direction was, where the eye lines were, which is super important. I think we spend a lot of time, all the time, with eye lines, and it's slightly subjective. And sometimes eye lines are confusing because the camera's right there. I'm looking right at the camera, but I don't know if it's someone's face geometry or the way their eyes are, but no, you don't look like you're looking at the camera. So we're always assessing that, and I think it helps keep the audience engaged. Once they feel like something's off and they don't know why, unless you're doing it on purpose, which sometimes we try to,
Sure.
it kind of loses the audience a little bit, and I mean, a lot of times we'll have amazing performances and everything's great, but it's like, eyeline's a little weird, and we'll huddle up and talk about it. And like, how about this? How about that? And, there's a poor second AC putting tape in different positions. And, but it's part of filmmaking, really. And it's part about making believable. And it's definitely a group effort, and we're all trying to keep track of that stuff.
Well, you can have somebody's entire job be tracking eye lines, because when you get that wrong, it is way wrong. And it can be something that feels so subtle, but you look at it and it just doesn't add up. As somebody who has made a couple of really bad films that I would never show anyone, having the eye lines off consistently is something that you start working towards and getting better at. And it's just something that when it's like sound or one of those things, you can forgive a lot of things, but when you have those eye lines are off, it's just something that immediately pulls you out. And somebody who's not even knowledgeable about film, I think they'll just know something's wrong.
100%. No, 100%. And it's funny because we have to make space for the actors too. We're trying to get 2 cameras in there. The actor doesn't want to act to the camera. They want to act to another actor. So we're constantly, trying to make room. And the poor other actor's got a camera right here, and they're sitting on an Apple box, and they're putting their face up against the lens, kind of thing. And because I think everybody knows that this is an integral part of making an engaging film for people. And it's definitely and it was something that I continue to learn about, and because it's subjective, right? You have to analyze every setup, especially if you're talking about a conversation and you cut from one side to the other side, and if the eye lines aren't feeling right, it's weird, and it seems amateur to some degree. So it's super important for sure.
And can you talk a little bit about just how technical that is with all these things and all these things you're having to keep track of, as far as where you are in the location, moving through that while dealing with water and underwater, but giving the actors that freedom to find their space in the scene? It seems like the world where they're allowed to find their moments is very small. They can't really just go run off to the other side of the set to have that big explosive moment they want to, and you chase them over there. It's just going to be, they have a limited area where they're allowed to work within.
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting too when you start to get multiple camera coverage too, because your alley of perspective can be really small, because you can't really pan too far because you're seeing another camera or you're seeing a light. I oftentimes tease the operators that, like, we're not lit until you're jammed in and you don't have anywhere to go except exactly where you're supposed to. Like, I go too far here, I see the camera. I go too far here, I see the light. Over here, I'm off the set. And especially with all those cameras covering that, there's all those little alleyways get pretty small. And then you add the water element, and there's no hard marks on the floor. There's no couch to lean on, where you hit your mark and my right hand goes right on the armrest. And then out in the wild, we have river currents, we have ocean currents. Oftentimes we're shooting on boats, from boats, and the boat's moving, the actor's floating. It can get a little tricky. I think for this particular, and a lot of times I fight to have a techno crane so that we can chase the actors a little bit as all that's moving. We can, suck in a little bit, pan right a little bit. If you were to have a fixed arm and they kind of drift towards you, you're screwed. You tilt down and also now you're upside down or whatever. So, and we did things in the Devil's Mouth where we had like a line coming from a boat that an actor could hold on to that we painted out. We had safety divers sometimes would hold their feet in place.
Sure.
There was a couple times on stage where, we have 6 actors in the water and 4 cameras and all that's got to work and they're moving around. There was a couple times where I was, and communication's really hard in the water too. I would just run. I would leave the tent and I'd run. I'd dive in and I would hold the actors in certain places, and I was guessing. I would literally hold my breath, go underwater, and hold their legs. And of course I have to ask, is it okay if I touch you and you feel comfortable here? And, and I would just understand the relativity of the swimming camera, the floating camera, the crane camera, and the actor position. And I remember one time it was Catherine Newton, and she's like, "Oh, wow, that was so helpful. Why don't you do that all the time?" Yeah, my breath along, A, and B, I gotta watch all this other stuff, And we did another thing that was kind of fun, and it wasn't my idea. I would love to take credit for it, but talking about marks in the water, one of the tanks that we spent the majority of our time on stage in was huge. It was like 180 feet by 80 feet by 6 feet deep. So they're swimming, but it's not super deep. Somebody had the genius idea of taking water bottles and taping them with their marked colors as normal, and then tying fishing line to a weight, and we would drop them on the bottom, and then that would be their mark. And
that's brilliant.
Yeah, we'd line it up with the second team, with the stand-ins, and then we'd all drop their marks. And of course, there's some, there's a little bit of a wavering there, but it really helped us kind of, contain it all a little bit, and especially for lining up and getting camera all ready, especially with 4 cameras. So that was a fun little trick that was new to me that somebody came up with. I think it was one of the camera assistants. The Thai people are incredibly creative and resourceful, and just an incredible hardworking people too. So it was a really safe place to be in because you were supported and to find these solutions.
Can you talk a little bit about, I think, lighting each room, I guess, area, each cave had its own design to it because you would have different light sources for each room that you're in. And I think that's one was natural light that you would have, and others coming kind of from below, and not to give things away specifically, but you would have different lighting sources in each room. And was that part of the design? Because you really don't have a natural, like a window where light's coming in for the most part during this. You don't have natural light to work with.
Yeah, that was a big consideration as we started prepping and planning. And it's funny because the Thai service company producer, who's an American filmmaker in his own right, we were talking about this, and he told me that there was some interview one time with Spielberg, and somebody asked Spielberg, like, where's the light coming from? He said, the same place the music is. So there has to be a little bit of suspended belief in there a little bit. So that gave me some solace because I'm always trying to figure out light motivators and where it comes from, just so it makes sense. And so, in the real caves, there are some holes, we call them chimneys, where light comes through, and we use that a lot as references, and we'd see these places. And then a lot of the mouths would have a lot of light pushing in, but it would fall off quickly. So motivating light and where it came from, I think, also helps the geography, which you talked about.
Yeah.
And so that was something that we had to do. Luckily now with battery operated lights, we were able to build little boats and floating lights that are battery operated, and they're LEDs. So we could control them remotely with iPads, and we would strategically float them around in the real caves and in the real river. And then on set, Alec Hammond, our production designer, made these incredible cave sets, and each cave had to have a slightly different look just to differentiate them, both physically with their stalagmites and stalactites on the ceiling, and then also from a lighting standpoint, how do we make it look different? And of course, we looked at a bunch of different references, and originally his design was ceiling all the way to the ceiling of the stage, but it was totally encapsulated, and then there's water, and then there's walls. So it's like, where the heck are we going to light from? So we started talking about it, and he changed his design where he made ceiling pieces that were mobile, and I made big soft boxes that were mobile on chain motors and a slight gantry system. And he would move and lower and raise ceiling pieces to differentiate the caves, and I would adjust with the lighting, and then introduce some hard lights in there as if it was a shaft of light coming in there. And we went and we rig all this previously in anticipation for the scenes, and then we would just turn them off and turn them on as things moved. And he would turn these sets around overnight with giant, I mean, I'm talking like 20-foot tall stalagmites and stalactites, and crane them into the tank, and they were on wheels that could roll around. So it was a little bit of a to do, and stewing on how to do this. In scouting, we went through some real caves that were pitch black, but they would go on, so they would call them rafts, I guess, or kayaks, but they're just basically bamboo platforms, and they would take people in there, and each one of them had a beautiful Asian soft light lantern on them so that they could see, and they could show everybody. And so kind of stole that idea and had our guide have a lantern that he floated and pushed around.
You see it in the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of gave us, it gives us a reason to have some lighting and that there's always a motivator. And then of course they had headlamps on the whole time too, which was a little daunting at first, but I come to really appreciate it. First of all, we had to find the right lens combination where we didn't get flared out all the time.
Sure.
There are some flares and stuff like that. It's you just kind of have to digest that. It's funny because I spend a lot of time trying to flare stuff and make it cool. I'm like, let's mess this up and make it really graphic. But I was like, an hour and 45 minutes of flares is going to be a little bit hard to swallow, And so I had to test some lenses and found a lens combination that was palatable for a whole movie, which was the Ingenue Easy Zooms, which are, a little bit very approachable lens. They're all over the world. They're not super high end, but the way they handled the lens flare was great. We're in housings all the time, so we kind of had to be on zooms. We're on cranes, so we kind of had to be on zooms. Changing lens is just not really practical. You got to take this 50-pound housing out of the water, take it all apart, dry it off, and I mean it's a half an hour to change a lens. So we definitely needed to be on zooms. And luckily, these Ingenue Easy Zooms really worked in that regard. And then at the same time, I was like, okay, little headlamps. What's that going to be like when they're talking to each other? This is going to be So we found a few different ones. We tried to make them so they were dimmable remotely. In that package, it was just really hard with all the water. So we found one that were clickable and adjustable. And the actors were super helpful. They should get credit as the lighting team because they started learning how to tilt their head right to light the person, nicely, and also the flares. And we had a little bit of a hand signal language about tilt up, tilt down, click on. And, it wasn't always perfect. They'd go into water and the thing would float off their head, or they'd bump something and get tilted up. And it was a great take, but the light was in a weird position. And, and I'd have to either swallow it or beg for another take. But it actually ended up helping because they would light each other to some degree. And, I think I just actually snuck in and saw a screening last night. I hadn't seen it projected or seen it in the big theater. And, I think the big theater is a little bit brighter than it will be on television. But the headlamps were just bright enough to really show that it wasn't pitch black in these caves, but they definitely needed the headlamps, to some degree to see and be safe. So that's a fine line. But those things all combined together became our lighting plan, really is floating light by the guide, some holes in the ceiling, headlamps. And we just kind of use all those ingredients throughout the film, when it presented themselves.
And it's one of those things, though, that it's invisible, as it should be. The amount of thought and preparation that goes into that you have to work on, because if somebody's thinking about the lighting, the average viewer, then you're fucked at that point. Like the movie's way off if somebody's concerned about the lighting at that point. So
I really appreciate that, because I squirmed in my chair last night watching this. It was an Amazon employee only showing, but I somehow got wind of it, and I literally snuck into the Culver Theater and watched it. And of course, I'm really precious about lighting, and
of course.
Beat myself up all night. So I thank you for saying that. It makes you feel a lot better. I'll probably, I'm one of maybe 3 people that will pick it apart. My mom won't know the difference.
She won't know the difference. And it's something that to me in this film, the job is really, it's always to capture performance, but also to capture what looked like really incredible set design. And you do both of those here, where it's not that you're capturing that world and making that world believable, even though you're going between, I guess, occasional moments of CGI with backgrounds. Not sure where that was exactly, which is good.
Most sets. There was one time when we just created this other tunnel, and it jumps right out at me when I see it. And fascinating enough, as a side note, so sorry to interrupt you.
No, please.
Normally, to me, we have green screens and all kinds of stuff. The VFX team like, oh no, it's fine. Just put up solids, make it black. Because of reflections. I mean, you start introducing water, and it's a whole world. Like the big soft boxes we put up, because you see whatever light sources you introduce. So we had to make them uber soft. We used this it was like stuffed animal stuffing, on these like 40 by 40 boxes. And you can see it in the water. It has a nice oily kind of reflection on there. But any hard lights really give themselves away. So we'd have to camouflage them. I forgot what I was saying to you. So it was all set design. I mean, Alec, these sets were enormous, and they had 100 guys making these things, and it's all concrete. And then they made ones that were rubber so that the actors could act on them. It was an incredible, feat for them. I don't think we could have done it any place other than like Thailand, or the craftsmanship there is unreal.
It's beautiful. It reminds me of the kind of stuff that you would see when you start watching the director's commentary on Blade Runner, and you find out that they took these certain pieces from another set and just flipped it upside down. And now that's your columns and those kinds of things, where you're just seeing this and you're like, I don't know how they're pulling this off to get this scale to switch this room around between when they're going through this. I'm sure they're reusing stuff and moving things. I have no idea, because I don't know what the budget of this thing is, but I have a feeling they're punching way above their weight class, where this thing looks like it was an incredibly expensive film. But don't know for sure, but it feels like it was probably made for less than what it looks like.
I think that's part of working out of the country now. Like you get,
sure.
And the dollar is really strong. And B, labor is fairly approachable. In most places, I don't think we never could have made that in the United States. And right. The craftsmanship and the work ethic too is incredible. But no, they're huge. Some of these stalactites and stalagmites, I still, after 6 months, get confused which one's which. We're like 20 feet concrete on casters, and they would get 6 dudes in the water, moving them around a camera, and I use them to hide lights and stuff like that, because we made boats. We had little floats. We had lights on little floating mats, and I'd have to hide them all. But for cameras, it takes a little, maneuvering around. But these things were just being this. They were giant, and to see them out on dry land outside the stage when they were making them, it was just like, wow, how in the world? I wish you could see. I'm sure that as things come out, you'll see pictures of it. It was incredibly. It was giant. But no, super well done and impressive and thought out. And Alec had a whole scheme of what room they're in and what it looked like, and we worked together closely about how to make this, the lighting a certain way. And it was really fun collaboration for sure. And I really get that out of filmmaking. I can't really be on a softball team. 6:00 on Tuesday is never going to happen. But we're making movies and TV. Like it's our ball club, right? We all get to work together. Everybody's got a special job, and you're only as good as the weakest link. And on this particular movie, I was surrounded by a lot of really, really great artists and craftspeople.
Well, you can feel that people's heart was in the work. You can make a film that has a cynical message, and that's fine. But if you make a film with your heart being cynical about the project you're making, that comes through in the film, and you can feel that, and you feel people's heart in this. You can feel that people were really invested in the project, which isn't always the case in films like this. You're essentially doing a horror monster movie kind of, thing. And I love that stuff. Those are the movies that made me love movies, but they're not always told with a great deal of heart. And I do feel that in this particular film.
Well, I think that's a testament to Jeff's leadership to some degree, because he worked tirelessly. He was really plugged in with every aspect of it. And then also the cast. They hung out together. Their Thai handlers, I guess you call them, they would beat drums and cheer them off set when they would come off set, and they would sing. And so the morale was really, really high. And the kids would hang out together, on the weekends. And I think that they all grew so much, especially with their ability and comfort level in the water. When we first started out, we started up at a river in Chiang Mai, like, 2 air flights and a 9-hour bus ride away. And you could see their trepidation a little bit. Like, you want us to get on this kayak and go into this cave that's full of bats, and I can only go so far before the air quality is bad. Like, cut to, the last week, they're underwater for 20 minutes. And when they need a breath, they go down to the safety diver and get the hookah and come right back up collectively and fall right back into the scene. And,
Wow.
They did scuba training, they did breath holding training, swimming, and it was really, really fun for me. I'm a water person, like the ocean.
You come from water. That was how you got your start, right?
Maturation was just awesome, and I think they are still water babies now.
It's the two things you always hear about films: never shoot a film on water if you can avoid it, and if you have limited space, you have limited options. And so you decided to do something that's both of those. So is this something that is just, you look at that and you welcome the challenge, or is it some sort of psychological thing that's going on that you're dealing with, that's some deep rooted trauma that you're trying to work through, and some sort of like some self-hatred that you're dealing with putting yourself in that scenario?
No, I drink beer for that. No. I love the water. I call it my church and my therapist. When I had an opportunity to interview for this job, I had worked with Jeff many years prior on some commercial and PSA and a music video, but I hadn't for like 15 years. And I got wind of this, and I pitched myself because it's someplace I like, and it's one of the reasons I got into this business. I wanted to do underwater documentaries. I watched Cousteau endlessly as a young person, and Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom and all that stuff.
Sure.
I wanted to make animal and nature documentaries. And so for me, like, to be able to do water work is like super alluring, and of course it's challenging. You learn through mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've watched other people make mistakes, and a lot of doing water work is trying to eliminate those mistakes prior by planning and bringing your experience to it. And, for me, sometimes doing that, I have to have asks that seem a little bit out of the ordinary, but having, understanding how important they are. Like, we put showers on 4 corners of all the tanks. Everything supposedly should get washed off before it goes in the water. I don't think that happened all the time. Plus, we move sets around, but as a practice, it should. Everything's moving all the time in the water. So that's something that we have to be prepared for, i.e. techno cranes, things that can adjust with that. And then how much time you have to shoot. I mean, even in heated pools, people get hypothermia after a while, or you get really, really tired. It's exhausting to swim. Swimming is one of the most, I think, all-inclusive physical activities there are. It just burns calories, burns energy. And so having had these experiences, like, you go to a producer and it's like, oh, we need showers. They're like, what? Like, that's not on our budget. I don't have a line item that says, 4 showers. And so sharing this information sometimes is the hardest part of it, as opposed to just doing it. And but I welcome it. I like the challenge. It's fun for me. I like the challenge of filmmaking in general. All we do is problem solve, and we do it as a team. So that's even more rewarding. I think the biggest constraint sometimes is time and money. So I think I try to have plan A, plan B, plan C, whatever fits in the schedule and fits financially. And I think there's a lot of DIY approaches that people forget about. And it doesn't matter what's happening behind the scenes. It matters what the camera sees and what the frame sees, And I don't know. Do you remember a couple of years ago, they had those little cartoons where the guy's like, I need a 50-foot techno crane. Did you ever see those?
Yes.
So I've been that guy, but I've also been like, all right, fuck it. Push me down the hallway on the skateboard. And you don't really know the difference as a viewer.
As an audience, we don't know what you had in mind when you were planning it. Yeah, no, not at all.
So there's a lot of ways to work around that time, money, constraint. If you let yourself free think and you get everybody on board, for sure.
I genuinely believe that we have to have frameworks to work with. Then otherwise, if we just say you have all the money in the world, you have all the time in the world, go make something, it'll probably be an utter mess, because you have to have it done by this time, and this is all you have to spend it. You're going to make compromises. You're going to make choices. There's going to be things that you hate, that you look at, that make you cringe, that actually become the broken nose that makes it, the face handsome. It can be those things that are off-putting to you as the creator that you might have learned to love eventually, but as an audience, we see imperfections and we're drawn to them. We were talking about music at the beginning. You go to a live concert and somebody's voice is a little bit off, or they hit that chord just a little bit too early on it. You're connected, you're real, and it's alive. And I think there's something when things are too perfect or too polished, it just doesn't feel right. So you need it to be a little bit raw always.
No, I love that. There's just like a Poe has some saying about like that. There's something about it. Something exquisitely beautiful has some flaw in it. It's not verbatim. Yeah. It's about that. And it's so true. And it's funny because you said it, because one of the things that was one of those things that happened on The Devil's Mouth was that because moving the sets around overnight, and like sometimes I'd come in the morning and there'd be 30 Thai crew in the water, and we had water visibility issues. And I literally did lose sleep about it and sent a bunch of emails about it, and really we changed out the whole filtration system. And but in the end product, that murkiness lends itself to a little bit of tension, and it makes it a little scarier that there's a shark lurking in the background that you can't see because the water's dirty from the rocks. Like these are these happy accidents that you're talking about that aren't perfection, that actually, if you can embrace them, elevate the film and actually make it better. So, that was a really good lesson for me to embrace things and let go a little bit. And it is what it is, and we got to shoot it. And, there's a couple of days we didn't shoot water stuff because the water clarity was bad and we'd have to filter. And, it's part of the deal. And there was one other instance like that wasn't what I had hoped for, and it ended up helping the film. It'll come to me shortly.
Well, the murkiness creates shadow in the water that you can hide the monster in. It's perfect for that. It's if you could see everything clearly and you had that depth in it that you could see down to the very bottom of whatever the floor was going to be, and those tanks that we were shooting in, however you wanted to vision it. I love that if they stuck their hand in, you might not be able to see all the way down. And it's just, there could be something touching your foot and you didn't know what was there. That's so much scarier to me.
Exactly. No, I think that's exactly right, for sure. No. I'm thinking mostly of Watt, the scene. I don't know if you remember when he swims away from the group and then he gets attacked by a shark. Really murky. And I was just pulling my hair out, but in the final product, I think it really works.
Well, and that also happens at a point where it's earlier. And so it's not at the point where, it's not in the very beginning of the film, but it is something that's happening a little bit where we haven't really spent a lot of time there. So you're not completely seeing the xenomorph in that moment. It's still in the shadows a little bit. And it's perfect for this. It's how it should be.
Well, we talked about too, they're going through different areas that are going to look different.
Yeah.
Plus, not Fiji, or Cozumel, like where you can, it's like we're in a river in a cave. Like,
it doesn't feel off. It doesn't, even if the water should have been perfectly clear in that place in real life, it feels appropriate for it. So, and this is a layman, doesn't know anything at all. So, but it felt honest to me, and I don't know necessarily why. It's like when you can feel somebody's research in something, and you can tell that I don't know that this is the reality of the situation, but it feels real to me. That's all that matters. And this felt more than anything, though, the relationships between these kids, and not to be insulting, but these young adults,
I've been
felt real. Yeah. So, that it just, so that they are young adults, but these kids, their relationships feel honest to what it was like to be 21, 22, when I was that age, and it felt very similar to that. And it's just, that's what really matters. That's what you hang your hat on in this, that it's that you could put them in any number of situations and you could still have a compelling story because those dynamics work.
Yeah, I agree. That's interesting. I'm just so proud of them, and I think they did a great job. And it was a lot. They never complained one time, and they were wet all day long. Like it was just amazing. And there's not one of them. There's 6 and 7 of them sometimes. Right? Like,
yeah,
it was great. It was great. And Jeff got in the water every day too, and he kind of just felt like it was a part of it. Like you had to be experiencing it together, the same thing. And I was in the water all the time. I would go in the water, I'd set the cameras up, I'd set the lighting up, I'd do the blocking, I'd go out, dry off, go in the tent, we do a take. Okay, we're gonna turn around to this. I go back on the water, set it all up, So it was a process, but I loved it, I loved it.
So will you get back on the water again? Is this now that you've re-engaged with this part? Do you want to do this as much as possible? Or are you going to take a break from the water now?
I'll do it any day. I mean,
okay.
Like I took the weekends off and I go surf in Phuket. Like I love the water so much. And I've been fortunate enough to do some water work throughout my career. Haunting of Bly, we had a bunch of water stuff. Yep. I did American Horror Stories, an episode with Alicia Silverstone called The Lake, and we were in the water, and she did the same thing. I mean, she crushed it. She did all her own swimming and all her own stunts and held her breath. And I just think it's so cool when people embrace that challenge. And, and it's not like, oh, I'm going to roller skate. It's like, you could drown. Like, there's some real jeopardy there. And she did it too. And I just get uber impressed by people who don't do that regularly.
Yeah.
The chance and make it work. And, and then I've done some other like TV stuff that has water stuff in it. So I get excited when I get an opportunity to do it, and I didn't ever really quite end up being an underwater DP, but I think a good healthy mix is fine, Well,
you're getting to play in that world a little bit, which is fantastic. And you've been very generous with your time. I just got one last thing I wanted to say to you. Okay.
No stress.
Midnight Club is one of the most underrated shows I think I've seen in the last 15, 20 years. And that pilot is one of my favorite pilots of all time. I absolutely adored that series. And I think that's woefully underseen, which is hard to say for anything that Flanagan has touched, but I adore that as a kid who grew up with Nightmare on Elm Street being a very formative, kind of movie in my life, that I saw that when I think it was in second or third grade, something like that. So it was way too young to be seeing it, but those types of films inform me. And to have something like that I could show to my 11-year-old that might be a little bit too young for them to see it, but still I want them to, it feels appropriate to me though, that I'm not a bad parent. I'm not going to have, protective services called on me for showing them that, but it might be a little bit too spooky for some of the kids out there, but I love gateway horror and being able to give something. So, and it looks great too.
Yeah, I mean, same with me. I saw The Exorcist when I was far too young, and it
there you go.
Applied to me for life. I'd see a window shade blowing, and I'd go close the window. Oh my gosh, I'm still scared of it. Like, I'm not really scared of people. I'm scared of the devil for sure. But you think that the Midnight Club might be too much for 11-year-olds?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It depends on the 11-year-old, not my 11-year-old.
Because that was sort of our age group we were kind of going after a little bit. I mean, maybe a slightly older, 13 to.
So, you know what it really is? It's the stuff that it's dealing with death in such an honest way and that kind of stuff. Not really the scares in it. It's really the emotional honesty of it might be a little bit too mature for some of those kids, but I am happy to share that stuff with my kids. So
I was thinking of the gore, like Friday the 13th.
Oh, no, not that. I mean, we're Americans. So, we don't care when people get their heads cut off, but you show us like two people being intimate and we freak the fuck out. So it's like our priorities are way off in this country.
I have a 17-year-old daughter who's, has an encyclopedic knowledge of film and loves horror stuff. And, I like to call it genre now because, horror to me seems like, when I was growing up, it seemed like it kind of, well, we're not recording, right?
You're fine.
That's weird. It's been on for hours. It seems like it would kind of cheapen something a little bit, by saying horror. I think there's so many movies that were, really, really well done that would definitely fall in the horror category now. Like, Jaws was a horror movie. I think
absolutely.
Cape Fear was a horror movie. All the I don't know, all that stuff back in the day, wouldn't have been called a horror movie, but today it would be. So I like the genre thing because it encompasses so much. But to go back to the Midnight Club was a blast for me to shoot because every episode had a different story. And so we changed looks and lenses, and I went through, I don't know, 5 or 6 different lens sets on an episode trying to differentiate the footage. He gives you a lot of reign to be creative as long as it's good. And you do the work. Like there's a expectation of you to do a lot of work, especially things for me that were new, like clerical stuff that I'm not particularly good at. Made me grow with, lists and diagrams and plots. And, I didn't have a computer in college. And so it was really good for me to do that, and just the variety of it. And I think, again, another great set of actors in the Midnight Club. And these kids were tireless, and they did the same thing. They bonded together. They hung out a lot off the set and on the set. And I think it really comes across on the screen when these actors have that off-screen relationship. I think it definitely brings a validity or authenticity to their on-screen relationships. And I'm so bummed that show only lasted 1 season. I'm kind of surprised that Mike didn't take it someplace else, but to Amazon now or something. But
I feel the same way about it, but it is one of those things where I'm glad that I got one amazing season of it. And so I'm a greedy American consumer, so of course I want more, but I have to accept the fact that I got something that was pretty remarkable, and I can just be okay with that. And the fact that, yes, it was clearly being set up for another one, but it does feel like a complete story in and of itself, even if it's just that one season.
Yeah, especially the way it ended, for sure. No, and that was fun. And the other great part about that was the incoming directors were super fun. Axel Carolyn came in. I had done the episode 8 of Bly with her, which was the black and white one. And she's really fun for me to work with. We have a great rapport. There was a couple of just really, really cool directors directing Mike's work, Mike's material, and just how well prepared they come into it, and just having their own take on it. It's really interesting to see that evolution and that whole thing and be part of it, and it's not like, although his stuff's like anthology mostly, except for and it's not like, oh, it's Cheers and this is where we shoot, this is how we shoot it, or whatever, whatever it is, the 911, like this is how we do it. Each and every episode is different, so they get a chance to put their own spin on this material, and it's super cool.
Well, you had the overarching story behind it that was the connective tissue, but you really had, because it was just built into the DNA of it, each one of these kids telling their own story, their little spooky story around the campfire each night, kind of thing, where it just lends itself to absolutely putting your stamp on it. And I don't know why there seems to be this thing where people don't really embrace anthology the way that I do anymore. I love Twilight Zone, Amazing Stories, all that stuff. That's just so in my DNA that I want more of it.
Me too. And I think not only as a contributor to it, because of the variety, like I can't imagine going to the same sets for 10 years and seeing the same thing, Friends or whatever. But also as a viewer, like, you get excited to see, and that was the thing that tripped me out too, is like, I don't think it helped our industry for the streamers to launch all the episodes at once, because people would binge watch it and then they want more and there's nothing there. And so there's a fine line between, is it every week or is it every 2 weeks? I don't know, stretch it out. But like, I get excited by that as a viewer when it's an anthology, because I'm so curious what's next, and I like what you said too, but it's rooted in the overall A story, we called it, and then the B story. And it was fun to really have to differentiate them, and some of the episodes had 2 B stories in them, or, a B and a C story. And, as a creator, as a visual creator, it's so fun for me because I get to change it up and there's no real rules. Right. And we leaned on a lot of stuff, like as reference to, and some homage. And I think that's really impressive about how Mr. Flanagan is he's fine for doing that. Like, he loves giving homage to other stuff, like, even if he's making fun of it. I forgot the episode with the jump scares, with the, we kind of lean into The Ring or
oh, sure. Yeah.
What was Japanese, real Japanese version of it?
Ringu is the Japanese name.
We really lean into that. And, I think it's cool that somebody's so accomplished has no problem giving an homage to predecessors. I think there's something really, I don't know, confident in that.
Well, it's, we opened up talking about liner notes, And that's all it is. You know, every liner note has mentions of the bands that helped get them there. And so if you're thinking that you somehow created all this without standing on the shoulders of everything you watched before, you're delusional. So we all are, everything that we create is just taking in constantly. And whether it's conscious or unconscious, you can't help but absorb these images that you've seen, you know, for the first 20, 30s of your years of your life before you're in that moment, you know, where you're first putting that camera, or even 50 years into your life, 60 years into your life, 70, whatever it is, you could be pulling back from things that happened very early that you're not even aware of till you look at it later.
Sure. No, I wholly agree. And sometimes I wonder where these things come from. Like, how did I know that? Oh yeah, I watched, you know, I was a 70s TV kid. I watched hours of TV. And I mean, I still drank out of the hose and rode my bike around, but you know, I think it does inform us as consumers and viewers, and, you know, and we have a certain palette that's formed by what we watch. And yeah, no, it's really fascinating, the whole process. And I love how interested the next generation is in the process and how they're achieving a lot with very little. You know, I mean, they have iPhones that shoot 4K and 120 frames, and they have iMovie, you know, and you can get DaVinci downloaded. I mean, it's a pretty good time to be a filmmaker, I think, or a burgeoning filmmaker.
Well, you can learn your craft in a way that we couldn't when I was in film school. That, you know, there was no YouTube at that point in time. And, you know, people will say they're a YouTube filmmaker as a pejorative, but I mean, why wouldn't you put your stuff out in the world and get feedback and try to figure it out and hone things and play around and experiment? I mean, we're in the middle of summer right now as we're recording this, and the two biggest stories of the summer are Obsession and Backrooms. These two films that were made for next to nothing. You know, on The Odyssey, that would be less than the catering budget on one of those things. So, and they made an entire film.
The day. No, and I think that just juxtaposition of that's pretty amazing. You have this crazy IMAX movie, and then you have these other movies, and I'm excited by it. You know, I've gotten tired as, you know, only big movies. I don't. That's not really my wheelhouse. I'm in the, like, you know, $8 to $30 million movies. That's right where I want to be. It's a little bit more, I don't know, intimate of an experience. Plus, you know, I don't have any Academy Awards or whatever. So I love that this is going to hopefully, in my mind, bring more of that, you know, and I think that people are tired of the studio system. They're tired of not being able to get their movie made. And there's amazing movies out there that just don't get made, but we have Fast and Furious 12 or whatever, and all these, you know, Moana and these things that just don't really make sense. And the audiences are tired of it. They want some fresh stuff. You know,
very much so. And I've never understood. I don't want to play armchair studio head. I'm not interested in that position, would never want it. But I've never understood why you would prop up a $250 million movie instead of going out and making 10 others for 25. Like, and one of those things is going to hit, and something's going to work in there, or you're going to find something that you can work with, and, you know, you can build. Yeah, you can build careers from it. We don't have movie stars anymore in the way that we did when we were kids, because we became IP first instead of actor first at this point. And it's just really sad.
Wow, because you touched on so many things that I find myself talking to people about. And one of them is just that. I mean, Tom Cruise is the most recognizable actor still. He's 60.
Still.
What happened to the people that, you know, you discovered somebody? Like, that's what Hollywood used to be, is, oh, you discovered the new ingenue, you discovered a new person, and it's an opportunity for everybody. They're using the same actors on every movie. You know, how many movies The Rock in every year? And I think that you're right. The studio head thing it's not run by the studio heads anymore. It's run by the boardroom and the shareholders.
True.
Unless you have a proven commodity, no one's going to write a check for anything. And I think what you said too about, you know, do 10, $25 million movies. And was the Blumhouse model was. That's what New Line did. I did Annabelle. I think we did it for, I don't know, I think it was 12 million by the time we were done with reshoot.
And that was a big one at the time. That was considered like a spendier one, because they'd been doing everything for like $5 million. Yeah. They'd kept things incredibly cheap.
And it was, you know, it made $300 million. And I think that you're right. You spread your chips out, and one only has to hit to pay for them all. And you keep an industry. You know,
and you build a bench of people. You get people that are out there, they're able to experiment, and you find new voices. You can tell different stories, and everything is just so homogenized. But I'm so thankful that the audience is finally catching up. with, or just demanding at this point. They're just over it. I think that I love big dumb movies. Don't get me wrong. I have room in my heart for, the Ghostbusters movies of the world. I love those things, but I also want a tangerine every once in a while.
Yeah.
So and it's okay to have both of those.
I agree. And I'm seeing that the young people are starting to fall in line. You see the turnout at the theaters has changed, that demographic has changed. And you see that the kids are starting to, want more analog stuff. They're leaning away from the digital stuff. They want to play records. They want to do things that are more off the grid now. And everything's secular, but I think that, like talking about the boardroom and the shareholders, their dollars are going to start driving this, and the inability of people to tell really interesting, captivating stories. And there's many great filmmakers out there with projects that are just sitting themselves. Like, what the hell? And they're finding ways to make them now, and they're bringing outside money in. And so the studio system's obviously, if not dead, dying. So I'm excited as a filmmaker. I was scared and looking to pivot, and I don't know, I'm completely unemployable. What the hell am I going to do? I mean, short of a snorkeling fin rental in Fiji, I don't know what else I would do. And so I've actually have a new sense of optimism in the last few months, and I think it's going to turn around, and I think it's going to be great. I really do. I really, really do. We're going to have a growth pains, or what do you call it? Growing pains. But I think eventually we'll get there. Hopefully within my career span.
I think so. It feels that way. I legitimately feel like the tide has turned at this point, and there will be people that learn the wrong lessons and head down the wrong paths with these things. And it'll be if every blockbuster movie, they look back at the Batman films that Nolan did, and they learned all the wrong things from it and copied all the wrong pieces of those films and just made everything the wrong way. I think now that'll happen again with indies movies and small movies, and there'll be mistakes that are made. But if you give people the space to make those mistakes and to make films that are low risk, to the point that it's okay if it doesn't do incredible, it'll find its audience eventually. So I don't know. The tactile, tangible thing that you're talking about, there's probably more 20-year-olds whose rooms look like mine than 60-year-olds at this point. So we sold our vinyl, we sold our DVDs, we sold our laser discs, we sold our Betamax because we've been through it too many times. And we just did the subscription. The kids, they've only had that. Now they're saying, you know what? I want something I can hold on to. I need that experience of that. You look at the Criterion bus when that shows up and they're doing the Criterion Closet, it's 20-year-olds that are showing up for that thing and waiting and dying. And that just makes me so happy that the kids are embracing it again.
Me too. And I as a viewer myself, like I want character stories, and I want, heart tearjerkers and things like, I don't know, The Outsiders, things that aren't big needed thing, but it's really about humans and about their interaction and about their struggles, and those kind of movies that really have something to say and maybe a lesson to teach, and not just flash bang boom. And I don't know, maybe I'm nostalgic and naive.
Well, the Outsiders is like a great example that you lean into. Here's a book that was written by a 16-year-old girl about greasers from a generation that she was not a part of, and made in the 80s by a director who made The Godfather, who told this really small, intimate, personal story that was about a fight essentially. And it was so,
and launched a bunch of actors' careers, really.
Everybody in that thing was launched from that. It's the cast you talk about. Tom Cruise was in that small minor part in that movie, and that was one of those first movies that I saw when I was so young. I think I saw that when I was maybe 10 or something like that, 11 at the most, and it just floored me because I didn't know you could make movies like that. When Stay Golden Pony Boy, that messed me up when I was a kid. That was it. I was done. I was devastated by that. And I went out and, read the book afterwards. And then you find the whole story about it, just fascinating to me. That was the road to The Godfather for me, was through The Outsiders, weirdly enough.
Well, it's that way. It's like, just like talk about music, like you hear a track someplace and all of a sudden you're deep into somebody's, what do they call it? Library of music. And you don't know it. And that's the funnest part as a consumer, or as a fan, is to discover something that's new to you. and music for me is something I still do today. Especially listening to satellite music, I hear a song, I'm like, oh, who's that? I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea. And now I just down the rabbit hole, like this band, just like I said, I just discovered Rome. They've been around since 90. Like I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I heard some track and I was like, I heard a track, somebody play it. It was like a boxer on his Instagram. And I said, what is that? And now I've been listening to it on repeat, It's crazy.
Well, having teenage kids, as you know, I have a 16-year-old, you had a 17-year-old, I think you said.
Yeah.
So the thing I love about this generation is they're not as stuck in genres as I was. Right. I was a kid that hung out with, skateboarders. So it was punk rock and like indie hip hop. That was it. That's all you're allowed to listen to. Yeah. And so if you went beyond that, no, that's not okay. But for him, he listens to everything. He'll put on some indie hip hop artist I've never heard of next to the Smiths. And right. I never showed him the Smiths. He started playing that on his own. He found that somehow, which is just,
well, I think my daughter will play something. I'm like, I'll sing along. How do you know this? Because it's 30 years old.
Exactly.
Now it's old enough that they don't have to pay royalties, so they're playing it. No, it reminds me too of what was that Vandal song? I can't change now because the clothes are bought. It's like you got our generation. You got into something and you had to be that. That's it. Now they could be a punker one day, a goth the next day, country the other day. They go to see Taylor Swift one night and then, to a hip hop song the next night. And I think it's great as not having to ever really buy into something 100% like that, because it just limits yourself, really.
Oh, absolutely. And all of us all listened to everything. We watched everything. We just weren't publicly showing that. Right. We dressed apart, but we were consuming everything. You went back and you weren't admitting that you liked Duran Duran, and maybe you didn't like it at the time, but then you go back and it's undeniable. It's great.
Genius, But I also discovered, I started out like Kiss and and then I got into punk rock. And then I discovered Simon and Garfunkel and Crosby, Stills, Nash, and my uncle gave me a Doors tape for my birthday, and that took me down to classic rock, and it just turned into a whole nother world. And then that it just, it's this whole convoluted path we all go through based on what we're exposed to. And I think that's why we need to expose our kids to stuff so that they get it, And a lot of time my daughter's like, I don't like your music. I'm like, well, half the shit you listen to is my music. And second of all, if you don't listen to it, you're not going to know it. And she likes to play music. I'm like, if you're going to ever think you're a musician, you need to know some of this stuff. You really have to know, who Robin Trower is. She's like, who? I'm like, here, let me just play you Bridge of Sighs. And she's like, okay, Dad, whatever.
Well, I mean, it's that, to go back to the obsession thing where Corey Barker never read Monkey's Paw. He just watched the Simpsons episode that it was based on. So I guess you can.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Dude, so I get
so prophetic. What in the world? What kind of juju magic voodoo was that shit? Like Trump and all that stuff. It's just how did that happen?
I guess you have a show that's on for 40 plus years now at this point, something like that, 89. So almost in that range, but it's, I guess you're going to take enough swings over that, doing 20, 30 episodes a year, you're going to get something right in that sense. But it has been, you have a bunch of smart people writing a show for that long, and it's just you're going to nail a bunch of things. And it's crazy. It's crazy how prophetic it is.
Maybe we are in a simulation. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, with the black light behind you right now, and just like the disembodied head that's talking to you right now.
And I thought Max Headroom. Does that date me?
No, I know it. I know it very well. If I could do an imitation of the skipping voice, I would 100% do it. So
right? Amazing. Right on, Christopher. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Yes, very much so,
brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And congrats on the film, and congrats on the career that you put together. I'm a big fan, so I've really enjoyed the stuff you've been doing.
It's feast or famine, bro. You know how it is. It's
I do.
Crazy. I like it. I've been able to slip some commercials here and there in, and I like the variety. Variety, and I've never had the same day twice. So it's it's not great for families and people with a plan. And we need structure. I'm like, nah, it's so overrated.
The artist's life. It's not for everybody.
Right.
Perfect.
If I can answer any questions or help you in any way in the future, please. It's been a pleasure.
No, same, man. Likewise. And I hope I can talk to you on the next one. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right, bro. Take
Talk
care.
to you soon. Enjoy your weekend, man.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I've got some scattered pictures lying on my bedroom floor. Reminds me of the times we shared. Makes me wish that you were here, 'cause now it seems I've forgotten my purpose in this life. Well, all the songs have been erased. Guess I learned from my mistakes. Well, open the past and present now when we are there. Story to tell and I am listening. Open the past and present and the future too. It's all I got and I'm giving it to you. Well, loose ends tied and I'm sleeping. A rope down in my throat. I'm gagging on a souvenir. I live to fill another year. Well, dragging on until my skin is ripped to shreds. I'm leaving myself open wide, living out a sacrifice. Well, open the past and present now and we are there. Story to tell and I am listening. Open the past and present and the future too. It's all I got and I'm giving it to you. If you got no one and I got no place to go, would it be alright? Could it be alright? I've got some scattered pictures lying on my bedroom floor. Reminds me of the times we shared. Makes me wish that you were here. Now it seems I've forgotten my purpose in this life. Well, all my songs have been erased. I never learned from my mistakes. Well, open the past and present.